Darkness is not an affirmative force. It simply reoccupies the space vacated by the light.
This is the Hamilton Corner on American Family Radio.
It should be uncomfortable for a believer to live as a hypocrite.
Delivering people out of the bondage of mainstream media and the philosophies of this world.
God has called you and me to be his ambassadors, even in this dark moment. Let's not miss our moment.
And now, the Hamilton Corner.
You know, the Bible tells us that we are to let our yes be yes and our no be no. Could you imagine a world in which people would always tell the truth, people would always do the right thing, and people would always act ethically and morally? Well, it'd be a pretty good world, wouldn't it? Wouldn't it be a great nation if our leaders that we elect and we send to office and those we send to Washington would always do that which is good, true, honest, constitutional, and in the best interest of the American citizens who pay the taxes and ultimately foot the bill for this wonderful thing called the United States of America. Well, my name is Alex McFarland. So honored that you're listening tonight. I've got the privilege of sitting in for attorney, author, Pastor Abe Hamilton, and as I frequently have the opportunity to do that, it's a real honor. And folks, tonight we have a great broadcast. We've got a couple of very special guests that I want you to meet, one of whom is Jerry Willbur. Now, Jerry Willbur wrote a book some years ago called True Blue Revolution, the eerily prophetic novel that explores the United States in which politicians couldn't lie. Sadly, I wish that were fact instead of fiction, but Jerry Willbur is with us now, and I want to say thanks for holding. Thank you for a very interesting piece of writing. We're going to bring Jerry Willbur up in just a moment, but the rise of the true blue revolution. What an interesting premise that this book is, because the idea that politicians couldn't lie. You know, some years ago, during the Clinton years, actually, and look, sadly, whenever you have fallen humans, you're going to have dishonesty, you're going to have self-serving actions, you're going to have unfulfilled promises. Understand this, folks. The only one that will ever always do right by us, the only one that will always, come through for you and not let you down, that's the Lord. But just because the Lord Jesus is the only one that we can really depend on, and humans can let us down, humans don't always come through, that doesn't mean that we aren't to care and that we aren't to do what we can to put good people in office and to have people that will, they'll take an oath and we hope they'll do the right thing, but people don't always do the right thing. Now, we are to care and we are to be salt and light. And when Christians don't speak up into the vacuum created by the absence of the voice of truth and righteousness, will come many other things. And we see this all the time, that there's a vacuum that's been created by the absence of godly people of conviction in the public square. Hey, let me give you a little statistic from the Barna Research Group, because I realize, here we are a year away from a presidential election, and, with every election cycle comes a lot of noise. I'll grant you. I mean, there are people that are incredibly invested in political discourse, and there are other people that just wish it would all go away. But do you remember what Benjamin Franklin said as they were coming out of the Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia? And somebody said, what kind of government do we have? And my friend Eric Metaxas has written much about this, that Benjamin Franklin said, we have a republic if you can keep it. If you can keep it. Well, how is the republic preserved? Well, the republic is preserved by people being involved. And I would argue we are where we are, at least in part, with a lot of politicians that are not governing constitutionally. They're not being honest. They're pandering to special interest groups, because a lot of people of conviction and courage and a group whose voice needs to be heard, they have not been a part of the political discourse as much as they should. One last statistic before we bring up our first guest. The Barna Research Group, I've actually been to their offices when it was in Ventura, California. It might still be. But a couple of years ago, they did a representative sample of people from all across America. 78% of parishioners want their clergy, priest, pastor, clergy, they want their clergy to speak about moral, social, and political issues from a biblical perspective. All right, but guess how many did as of about 2 years ago? And I would suspect it's even less now. Roughly 12%. Now, pastors always say to me, they'll say, but Alex, I don't want to offend people. I might shut the door on the hearing of the gospel. If I talk about politics, oh, heaven forbid people close their ears and tune me out when I could have talked to them about Jesus, and I wasted my opportunity to be heard by talking about some political thing. But here's the thing for pastors and Christians that don't speak about moral, social, and political issues from a biblical perspective. And I know, having been in front of many thousands of young people, they often conclude that it must not matter, or maybe the Word of God doesn't have anything to say. Look, the Bible has everything to say about morals, marriage, sexuality, gender, money, good stewardship, what God says against being wasteful, also honesty. And so it's important that Christians, pastors, parents, people in a position of leadership, that we do speak, and that we let young people know that, yes, God has spoken, and there is something from the Word of God, and our faith and our convictions should inform our decisions in the public square. Well, I'm going to see if we have our guest. Do we have Jerry Willbur in the board yet? Jerry, are you there? Jerry Willbur. Okay, we must not have him. Oh, okay. Bobby, and we have great crew. They're telling me they're perhaps going to get him in the board. But folks, if you're just tuning in, Alex McFarland here. This is the Hamilton Corner. And imagine if our politicians knew, you think about this, if they knew that the voters were watching. And I want to say this too, if they knew that pastors and clergy and priests that speak to 100 million adults a week, that's what it is. The low number of people that are involved in church, involved in faith, and whether it be church, whether it be synagogue, the Judeo-Christian worldview, 100 million people a week, that's probably a low number. Can you imagine if clergy were saying to their parishioners every weekend, church members, parishioners, look, you need to vote and vote godly. Our elected officials, they're going to answer to God for how they govern. I really think it's caused a huge void where the church has been silent. Well, I want to give some time to this author. Jerry Willbur, are you there, my friend?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Hey, thanks for holding. Welcome to the program.
No problem.
And no, it took a little bit to get you potted into the board and all that. But tell me about this interesting book, What If Politicians Couldn't Lie? What's the premise of the book?
Well, the premise of the book is that when it was first written, and this is actually two books, one's True Blue Revolution and the other's Rise of the True Blue Rebellion. They're both about the same thing. Back in 2014, 2015, I wrote a first draft, and the editor said it sounded like science fiction. because it was talking about a rigged election, and it was talking about a psychopath trying to secretly undercover take over the country. And obviously that's become eerily prophetic, at least I think so. And both these books talk about this, and one way to try to overcome the lack of trust in the political system was to figure out a way that they could make a person who could not lie. And to do that, they had to give him some medications and everything else, and it had a side effect of turning him blue also. And,
so a truth serum that was visible. He was blue.
Yeah, right. So they could tell, actually, that he had taken this. And one of my big things that bothers me is that we've allowed the color blue to be taken from us. Originally it was the guys in blue against the redcoats, and then when I'm just old enough that when I was being brought up, it was better dead than red. Red Chinese, red communist.
Of course,
red, it was a sign of the And unfortunately, that's one of the many things that we've had stolen from people that are a little more, I consider myself conservative Christian, is that color blue. And so that's where this comes from. So this guy can't tell a lie, and it creates a lot of problems for him in politics.
Well, you know what? I was in a seminar last week, Mr. Willbur, and a lot of the strength of Marxism has been that they control the language. I was interviewed by Fox News last week on the term Christian nationalism, which the left intends that as a slur. Now, I want to say, everybody, look, if you're a believer in Jesus and you care about America, I proudly embrace the term Christian nationalist because, yes, I care about God and country. But haven't the socialists been very adept at controlling language, controlling symbolism, and really influencing people's opinions based on the way that they really try to commandeer language?
Oh yeah, and it's very intentional, and they unfortunately have some very good marketing people. I mean, if you think about the whole thing of pro-choice, pro-life, I mean, if people didn't understand what the real meanings of those words were, I mean, we should be for choice, right? Except not the way they've got it slanted. I mean, the original tree was put in the center of the garden so that we could have choice. The only way you can have real faith is if you have choice. But they've taken a lot of those words, and this is a large part of what I'm trying to come against. As a matter of fact, one of the key movers in my book is what's called the dangerous church. And the dangerous church is the church that actually gets out there and does things and is actually out there ministering to people. And it's not the watered-down church at all. One thing that's always intrigued me, and I've always asked people, I said, what was it about Jesus that attracted people to him? And we see that. And part of that's what we have to do. We have to be out there doing things in a way that attracts people to the message we have, because I know you and I both agree it's a very, very powerful message the world needs to hear.
So
as you're saying,
I've got to ask you, because your books, the True Blue Revolution, then the Rise of the True Blue Rebellion, they do really sound prophetic.
Right.
So here's my question: when Hillary Clinton referred to patriotic, God-fearing, family-centered Americans, I mean, we would have called such people the salt of the earth. She said they were deplorables.
Yes.
How did that assessment strike you?
Well, I'm pretty deplorable, but it's the whole idea of the collective against individualism. When I saw that, I thought, my goodness, you hear people talk all the time about coming from a blue-collar background, which is one of the reasons why I placed this story originally in Michigan. And a guy that's just a factory worker, blue-collar, I shouldn't say just, a blue-collar factory worker that has to step up. Because
hey, Jerry, can you
step up? Yes.
Hang on, we got to take a brief break. Can you hang with me, and we'll be back on the other side of this break. Folks, it's the Hamilton Corner on the American Family Radio Network. Alex McFarland sitting in for Abe Hamilton. Stay tuned. We're going to come right back after this. More of Truth for our times, which we need. Stay tuned. We're back after this.
Shining light into the darkness. This is the Hamilton Corner on American Family Radio.
Welcome back to the program. Alex McFarland. By the way, I do want to remind everybody that the first of 7 summer camps starts this weekend. I'll be in front of 1,200 youth, really probably about 1,250 teens, Biblical Worldview Camp. And so I really, really appreciate your prayers that we can help young people find a relationship with Jesus. We can talk to them about truth. And somebody who's doing that also is Dr. Jerry Willbur. We'll resume our conversation with Jerry Willbur here in just a moment. But my own website is alexmcfarland.com. My speaking tour is on there. We're adding new dates all the time. So thanks for your prayers. And look, whoever you are listening, we want to commend you for standing for truth and standing for convictions as a Christian and as a patriot in this season, because we need it. We really do. Well, Dr. Jerry Willbur is the author of several books, The True Blue Revolution. But during the break, Dr. Willbur, you and I were talking about the influence of technology on our lives. And with AI, you know, on the one hand, let me talk about like when leaders are caught in a lie. You know, on the one hand, it seems like if it's on the internet, it's eternal. But now with AI and scrubbing, are we in a greater danger than ever for the truth to be bent and manipulated? And even when candidates and officials blatantly mislead the American people, they can, I mean, it's whoever's got the biggest IT budget, they can spin the truth to their liking. Yeah, isn't that the risk in which we live?
That's definitely the risk, and not to just plug the book, but when it was written in 2018, one of the things that they had in there, what I had in there was it was an actual digital candidate. I don't want to get too much into the details of the book, but when they eliminated our hero because he wouldn't cooperate with them, they had enough video and audio that they just digitized him, and they had him actually run for president totally absent. And what really scares me about artificial intelligence is, and large part of this book is about psychopaths and the rise of psychopathy, which is a pretty scary topic on itself. But artificial intelligence is the perfect psychopath because it can lie. It has basically no empathy, which is a definition of a psychopath. It can think fast, and I have to be careful how I say this because it processes information. It doesn't think like we do, but it thinks pretty fast. So basically, what we're creating here is something that's very influential, and you know, it can do facial recognition beyond anything we can believe now. Once it gets a baseline on you, it can tell how you're feeling, what your emotions are, and then it can pattern those to try to win you over. So it can be very, very influencing. And this is now, let alone another 2 or 3 or 4 years, it's moving so rapidly. That's what's scary. So I think that's a huge impact as far as politics. Yeah.
You know, like looking at where AI is, and I mean, I've read journal articles theorizing that, you know, every keystroke you've ever typed online is probably recorded somewhere. I mean, if we had been talking about these things even a few short years ago, we might be dismissed as conspiracy theorists. But in terms of the truth being spun, fake news, deep fakes, videos being manipulated, audio sound bites being manipulated, whereby the cadence of people's voice is just indistinguishable from what computers could generate. I mean, Dr. Willbur, we're there, aren't we? We're I mean, George Orwell could never have dreamed where we are. Would you agree?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, it's and I think what's sad, and I when I do a lot of counseling, and I tell people, number one, are they aware? And then number two, do they care? And they said, unfortunately, a lot of people are not aware of these things. And I talk to people all the time. Matter of fact, when I first wrote this book, the first book and the second one, they said, well, that's too science fiction-ish. No one, a couple of the reviewers said that's pretty hard to believe. Now it's like, whoa, wait a minute.
So let me ask you a question.
Psychopathic deep state. And you're talking about how easy it is to manipulate a lot of people. And I think people are starting to get aware. And the good news is I think that more and more people are starting to care. And that's going to be the key, to not be so comfortable that we just kind of slumber our way into Gomorrah or whatever.
So
I don't want to be too radical.
Yeah, I remember the Robert Bork, the Robert Bork book title, "Slouching to Gomorrah." Do you remember that?
Yeah, kind of dated myself on that one, didn't I?
Oh, that's okay. That's okay.
Well, yeah, people have been aware of these things. It's just that I think that you're always afraid to be looked at as anti-technology instead of saying no, but we need to have technology serve us, not us serve technology.
Right. And
that's what's scary about artificial intelligence, TikTok, all of these things, our children that are watching. And it's a time that people need to be aware, and they need to jump up and down and start trying to do things about it. And try to invest more and more of our money into discovering about the human brain and the great potential in the human brain, which is another aspect I try to touch on in both my books.
Well, that's a wonderful topic. I want to talk about that. But first of all, I've got to ask you a question. In just a digestible, small, bite-sized chunk, define AI, please. Artificial intelligence.
Well, let me put it this way. A friend of mine says it shouldn't be called artificial intelligence. And he works quite a bit with it. And I said, why not? He said, it's really machine intelligence. Because artificial intelligence sounds like, when we use the word artificial, go back to talking about words again, right? When you say something's artificial, what does it mean? It's not the real thing.
Yes.
And he said, this machine intelligence basically is programmed by humans to think exactly as we can, as much we can, like humans, and to be able to learn. And that's what people don't realize, that once you get these programs going, they actually will learn and they can take off. And they're constantly improving, continually improving. So artificial intelligence is actually modeled on a lot on how we actually think, but it's able to do it much faster, process information. In one way, the positive is it doesn't have emotions. The negative is it doesn't have emotions. And they've asked artificial intelligence a couple times to, they provided problems like, how would you solve pollution? And it says eliminate 7.5 billion people and you won't have any pollution. And it was a very cold, logical answer.
Very pragmatic.
I don't think we would agree with that, but yeah. I don't think they'd agree with that. So, yes.
So, pragmatism sounds good, be practical, but it's dangerous when somebody in a position of power gets to decide what is pragmatic. I mean, for the environmental crazies, to eliminate cars. I mean, I look at California, that they say they're going to ban the sale of gas vehicles by, within a few short years. Yeah. But yet we know that electric vehicles have a much larger carbon footprint than traditional internal combustion engines. So do you see, at least for America, I mean, there are these just invasive environmental regulations, the banning of gas stoves. It's the power grid can't sustain, all electric gas cars. Also, by the way, I don't know if you saw this, and then I'm going to let you respond. But in California, all right, an automobile fire. They say if an automobile is on fire, takes 3,000 gallons of water to put it out. If an electric car catches on fire, as many have done, takes 30,000 gallons of water to put it out, 10 times more water. So the supposed pragmatists, like AI, are making just cold, unreasoned decisions when really the outcome for we human beings is very, very negative. I mean, what do you see should be our reaction to this?
Well, first of all, being aware of it, and that's why I talk a lot about psychopaths, because AI and psychopathy are very, I think, unfortunately, very close together. And that it's all about power, dominance, and control. And part of this idea with EVs, I think, is to try to get people condensed into big cities. You know, you hear about the,
Right.
The whole movement that, what is it, the 15-minute towns or 15-minute cities.
Right.
Everybody should live in it. And people go, why do they want to do that? And they go, power, dominance, and control. Those are the main motivators of people that are psychopaths. And that's really what artificial intelligence is also all about: power, dominance, and control, by controlling the information and being able to process information much faster than any human being, and being able to read our emotions.
And let me say, with EVs that are, instantly, Siri compliant or connected to the grid, I mean, they could shut down. I mean, couldn't it be that you're driving your electric vehicle, and based on your internet choices or whatever, by whatever matrix they decide, okay, you don't have to go to the grocery store. You've already been to the grocery store this week. You're not allowed to go back and get that second gallon of milk. We're going to turn this car right around and send you home. I mean, we could be there.
And I think people, I don't think people realize that's the idea of these condensing everything into these cities. And I think we need to really study close about federalism. People call federalism. What is it? Getting the things down. The decisions need to be made at the lowest possible level. And that's why one of the things I write about in the book is too much bigism, that they try to do big cities, big government. Why is that? Because that's power, dominance, and control. And, it has huge impact. And then the environment, I mean, electric cars are wonderful, but they're not the answer, because you've got all the issues of the minerals, things that have to go to be put into that battery. And how are we going to recycle the batteries, and where are we going to get all these materials? And, it's just that I don't think, unfortunately, people are barreling forward with a lot of things, including artificial intelligence, which what was interesting to me is that some people like Elon Musk and a couple other people actually stood up and said, wait a minute, maybe we're moving too fast. And it's the type of thing we're going to have to really deal with, yes.
So in what ways have people interacted with AI, and maybe they don't even realize it yet?
Well, that was originally way back when was called the Turing test, which was you could tell when the computers were successful when you could actually talk to a computer on the phone and not realize it was a computer. I think a lot don't realize. As silly as it sounds when you talk about Siri, or you talk about Alexis, or I don't even know if I got the names right there. You watch children. I watch my own grandkids dealing with that, and they think it's a person. And it sounds like a person. Right. And it's finding TV for them, and it's finding songs for them. And I think that the blending, there's a concept that's called the uncanny valley, where if something looks pretty close to you but not quite, our sensors kind of kick in and we kind of react to it. And I think we're past that with voice. We could be talking right now to AI or a machine intelligence, and unless we threw it some super type of hard question, we wouldn't be able to tell. So I think that that's already here. It's already pretty scary. People say, well, what do you do about it? And I say, well, that's where people got to be aware, and they got to start stepping up and getting more involved. I mean, it sounds too simple, but I don't know any other way to do it. You can't solve it with your own artificial intelligence. Yeah.
Dr. Willbur, while you and I are talking about AI, now I know I've got to figure out if you're really real. Okay. I'm going to guess 30 years ago. Okay. You're going to love this question. Who did Deep Blue play chess against back? I'm going to say it was 1997, late 90s. Who did Deep Blue, and what was Deep Blue, and who did Deep Blue play chess against?
It's funny because he played against the Russian. Wish I could remember the guy's name. it was IBM's computer called Deep Blue, and I kind of hint at that a little bit in the True Blue Revolution. What happens is an artificial intelligence, actually a cyborg, decides he doesn't like what the psychopaths are doing, and actually comes and actually helps out the Blue Revolution people. But one of the things that he's mesmerized with is Deep Blue, the actual one of the first computers that actually did a good job in chess. And of course, people say, "Oh, look at that." And I said, "Well, chess is kind of very limited, but it was a very powerful demonstration back then." Now, it can take any chess player basically. Very high power.
Yeah, I love pop culture trivia. I was thinking of, does my memory serve me, Dr. Willbur, Garry Kasparov? Do you remember?
Yeah, I think that was it. Yes, yeah. I remember he was a Russian, but I couldn't remember his name.
Yeah, but wasn't that an early iteration of AI?
Yes, and showing in a very limited fashion. Because what happens is, I'm not a great chess player. I have a hard time thinking more than one or two moves ahead. But, they claim the really great chess players are, 12, 13, 14 moves ahead. Basically, that computer was taught to think, 50 to 60 to 70 moves ahead. And if Garry Kasparov did something totally illogical, probably would have thrown the computer for a little while. But it'd say, okay, now here we are. And it's just, it's total focus.
We've got a break. Let you and I visit again when we've got more time. Dr. Jerry Willbur, author, and your books are at Amazon. Do you have a website also?
Yeah, Jerry.Willbur, JerryWillbur.com. JerryWillbur.com. And
True Blue Revolution.
Discuss the books.
God bless. Hey, we've got to take a break. Folks, stay tuned. Alex McFarland here. The Hamilton Corner is back after this. Don't go away.
The Hamilton Corner podcast and one-minute commentaries are available at afr.net. Back to the Hamilton Corner on American Family Radio.
Welcome back to the program. Alex McFarland, very honored to be sitting in for attorney, pastor, and cultural commentator Abe Hamilton III. By the way, you can listen to this again at afr.net and share this program, which in light of our upcoming guest and the previous guest as well, I'm sure you might want to listen again. We've been talking about artificial intelligence, and I'm really excited on a number of levels to bring to the mic the colleague that you're about to hear from. I was at National Religious Broadcasters last week, NRB. Saw a lot of great people, a lot of just people doing so many innovative things for the kingdom of God, one of whom is Dr. James Spencer. He is currently the president of the D.L. Moody Center, an independent nonprofit organization inspired by the life and the work of D.L. Moody. And they've got an incredible facility that is steeped in history in Massachusetts, but also making a difference here in the 21st century. But Dr. Spencer, thanks for making some time to be with us tonight on the American Family Radio Network.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
I got to tell you, I'm the biggest D.L. Moody fan you'll ever talk to. When I was a young Christian, I read a biography of Dwight Moody. And I mean, in the 19th century, folks, a horse and buggy era, God used him to turn the world upside down for the gospel pretty much. But I want to get into the center and then specifically your research and work. But why should Christians of the 21st century be informed about D.L. Moody? What about his life would inspire people today, Dr. Spencer?
Well, I think what many people don't know about, and D.L. Moody, if people know him, they generally know him as an evangelist or the founder of Moody Bible Institute in Chicago. And those were certainly important things that he did. But some of the things that I find interesting about D.L. Moody is what he actually lived through. The period of history that he was involved with was anything, but calm. It was fairly tumultuous. And so he would have grown up on both sides of the Civil War, really. Actually ministered to people during the Civil War, both sides, Union and Confederate, and was sharing the gospel with both sides. But then, after the Civil War, the country was still in great upheaval, and he had to learn to navigate that as he went out and shared the gospel in the South and in the North. And so I think a lot of the things that he went through as an evangelist, as just a minister of the gospel, I think he went through a lot of the things that are similar to what we're going through now. He had to navigate the political arena. He had to navigate a cholera outbreak, which is sort of analogous to our COVID. He went through a civil war with a very polarized and divided nation and still managed to share the gospel within it. And so I think his tenacity in sharing the gospel, his focus in sharing the gospel, are things that we need to learn from even today as we go through our own trials and troubles on the political side and social side. I think D.L. Moody's word to us would be, don't be distracted. Don't be distracted from sharing the gospel. Don't be distracted from building the kingdom, because at the end of the day, that's what's going to matter.
Well, I think so many associate D.L. Moody with the city of Chicago, and rightly so, because so much of what he did was based out of there. But what about Northfield, Massachusetts? Now, how did he, what does he have up there, and how did that come to be?
Yeah, so he was born in Northfield, his birthplace is still in Northfield, Massachusetts. He moved from Northfield to Boston, and then from Boston to Chicago. After the Chicago fire, he had really felt the call, kind of prior to the Chicago fire, to begin doing world evangelism and doing evangelistic campaigns around the nation and then overseas. And after the Chicago fire, it was almost like God released him to go do that. At that time, his wife said, we're going to need a place. If you're going to go do this, this is a hard life. You're going to be leading. I want you to have a place to come back and relax. And Northfield became that place. So after the Chicago fire, he moved back to Northfield. But D.L. Moody was, he died relatively young. And at the end of the day, he wasn't a very restful guy. He was very peaceful, but he worked an awful lot. And so in Northfield, they actually founded two schools, the Northfield Seminary for Girls, which was a boarding school for young girls, where they learned biblical and theological content, but also just vocational skills. And then he founded a similar school for boys. And then he also held summer conferences for pastors, for young Christians, that were held there on property in Northfield in an auditorium that D.L. Moody built, about 2,300 seat auditorium. And that auditorium is still standing today. It was actually bigger than the population of the town at the time, and it's almost as big as the population of the town now. But he filled it up to standing room only, and even had people kind of standing outside the doors to come in and listen to the gospel being preached, to worship and to pray. And that's really what he did on that campus in Northfield.
When did he die?
1899. Right. Yeah, he only lived 62 years, and accomplished an awful lot in a short 62 years time span. Sure.
Well, and the website, folks, I would encourage you to visit moodycenter.org, MOODY, moodycenter.org. Now, on the website, there are things that you've done your own research and writing, and it really caught my attention, Dr. Spencer. You've written something, 20 questions on technology and AI, artificial intelligence. Tell us about that, because, it's ubiquitous in the news. What's your, as a Christian thinker and leader, what's your initial take on artificial intelligence?
Yeah, my tendency is to approach any of these new things in a fairly calm manner. I take seriously what is talked about in Hebrews 12:28, that we belong to an unshakable kingdom, and I'm very grateful for that. And so AI doesn't really shake my foundations, although it does pique my curiosity. And I think it should give us pause. We should approach it with caution. And so, but we can do that. We can approach things with caution and still be calm. And so AI to me is, there are a few issues that I think Christians really need to wrestle with. Number one is, I think the humanization of the technology is confusing. We've applied a lot of human-like language to the technology, particularly with artificial intelligence, that we've never really applied to other technology. And I think it's probably creating some confusion as to what this technology is actually doing and how it's doing it. And so, go ahead.
Yeah, and
Sorry.
what is this technology doing? And is it really changing the way humans think?
It shouldn't be changing the way we think. The way I think about it is, calling it artificial intelligence is almost a misnomer.
Right.
It's still doing computational thinking, computational reasoning. And so it's pulling data and it's pulling things together. It's using probability models to give us answers to different questions. And it does that better and worse in some cases. But when we think about intelligence from a human perspective, we're not just computers. We do far more than just compute things or reason through things. And so that artificial intelligence really conveys a more narrow scope of the sort of thinking that humans can do. And I think that artificial intelligence models that have clear purpose and more of a narrow use case can really help humans in a way similar to, though not exactly like, a calculator helps us with long division. We could do that same calculation given time, but it's sort of helpful to speed it up on occasion. Now, that said, I don't want to minimize or trivialize the problems that artificial intelligence may ultimately bring. I think that there is some real challenges to privacy, to giving over of systems to artificial intelligence when we're not really exactly sure how these things work or what they're going to do next, because they're consistently, quote unquote, learning. And I think that there are some real challenges there. And so I would be one who would advocate more for a slower pace of development of AI until we really deeply understand what's going on with it and what sort of implications we may want to avoid with it. But reaping the benefits while minimizing the downside seems to me to be a fairly simple observation to make. And so for me, a lot of it comes down to when we're using this humanizing language for the artificial intelligence, are we really missing something more fundamental, which is, do we really understand what it means to be human?
With AI, given any engine, let's say you're buying something online and it they know your buying habits, and so out of 24 possible products, they know that you're going to buy the brown pair of shoes rather than the red pair of shoes, probably. Is AI generating truly original thought, or is it merely regurgitating some options out of a finite number of possible combinations?
I think it's more the latter than the former. So right. I think it is more of a regurgitation engine, if we wanted to call it that, but it's a reasoning engine. And so if we think of all the possible solutions that could be put forth, it's choosing the one that seems most probable to it, based on a series of computations that it's doing in a very lightning fast, faster than we could ever think about doing it.
But is choosing even the appropriate word?
I don't necessarily, probably not. It's probably landing on or, sort of computationally getting to that answer and then presenting that as if it has chosen it. I think that's a really good clarification. These are some of the challenges I think we're going to have with this technology, is making sure that we are keeping it in the realm of machine and not equating it with what our brains actually do and what humans really do. Because to my mind, any creativity that comes out of AI is going to be creativity that starts with human beings. AI doesn't have the capability to determine a purpose, a goal for itself. It's just sort of doing what it's programmed to do, like any other machine is. And the fact that there are some movements, some changes, we get answers, in other words, that we don't expect out of AI sometimes, doesn't necessarily mean that AI is evolving into a sentient being. It may just mean that we really don't understand the complexity of the computations that it's doing. And so our predictive abilities are limited.
It's like the Rubik's Cube. I mean, I think they said there were, 43 or 243 billion possible choices. I want to change gears. I wish we had so much more time, but you wrote a book, Christian Resistance, Learning to Defy the World and Follow Christ. I like that title. Folks, if you're just tuning in, our guest is Dr. James Spencer. And I want to hear about your book, Christian Resistance, Learning to Defy the World and Follow Christ. What's the premise of the book?
So in Matthew 6 was really the inspiration for the book. Jesus is walking with his disciples, and he points out people who are giving, who are fasting, and who are praying. And they seem to be doing these things in an inappropriate way. And so Jesus tells his disciples in that chapter, hey, don't give like this, don't pray like this, don't fast like this. Instead, pray like this, fast like this, give like this. And he gives them instruction, sort of this counter instruction to what they're seeing in the world. And so as I look out at the sort of environment that we exist in today, I see a lot of lessons that we need to learn in contrast to the world. And those are sort of embedded in the themes that I use in the book. Things like, how do we pay attention differently than the world? How is it that we respond to situations differently than the world? What is it that we imitate that is different than the world? And so it's constantly sort of trying to resist the pressure to conform to what the world would like us to be and holding our shape. I usually liken it to a dam holding back water. The water and the dam are touching, and so that's just like us in the world. We're not isolated from the world, we're in the world. But in order for the dam to do its job, it has to hold its shape. It can't fold in on itself. It can't succumb to the pressure of the water. It's got to hold that water in place, and it's got to hold its own shape. And I think for us, Christian resistance for Christians today is holding our shape despite the pressures of the world. And that's really what the book is about. It's intended to give people some handles for new Christian practices and just different ways of approaching our faith that are really embedded deeply in our current context and environment.
And, there's not only holding our shape and resisting that which is false, that which is ungodly, but there's also shaping the culture. I mean, with God's help and for God's glory, we're called to do both, aren't we?
I think so, yeah. And I think, our best way to shape the culture is to be the church in the culture and allow that culture to sort of shape around us.
Hey, give us the website one more time for the D.L. Moody Center, please.
Certainly, yeah. It's moodycenter.org. That's MOODY center.org.
And where can people find your book?
Amazon.com. It's available in Kindle and print. And I should say all the proceeds from the sale of the book go to supporting the D.L. Moody Center and our various campaigns and ministries.
Wow, God bless you, Dr. James Spencer. Folks, almost out of time. It goes by so quickly. But you've been listening to the Hamilton Corner on the American Family Radio Network with Alex McFarland, your guest host. Little bit of info here on AI. Listen again. You'll find it at afr.net. Hey, God bless you, folks. We'll see you tomorrow. Stand strong for truth.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American Family Radio.